Hi, Huntresses.
Welcome to Talk Rich to Me,
where we explore the human side of finance. We are your co-hosts,
Yesenia Rhodes
and Stephanie Gutman,
co-founders of Huntress Wealth. Welcome back. This is Yesenia, and today's guest is Dr. Katherine Melot, chiropractor, entrepreneur, and founder of the growing BirthCo franchise. Katherine shares her journey from being kicked out of her home at just 17 to building a successful business that's reshaping care for women. We hope you enjoy the story of resilience, purpose, and power. Thank you so much for being here. I honestly feel very privileged to know you. I've gotten to know you over the past 4 years, but our listeners haven't. And I think you just have an incredible story. For the American dream that we keep on being told is dead, you've done it. And when I met you, you weren't even 30 and you were doing such incredible things. So
you are very sweet to say that. I have had a wild ride, I feel like, in my life.
You have. I feel like you've been knocked down 3 times hard that I know about. Wow. And you've risen above the occasion, which is incredible. With that said, I think it would be really interesting for our listeners to understand how you grew up. What was your financial picture?
We'll go way, way back when I was very, very young. I grew up in a very middle class family. I don't remember ever wanting for anything, but we also didn't overextend financially. I have 8 siblings, so we didn't, as a family, go on a ton of vacations or go out to eat, but we had food on the table. We had cars that worked. Like, I just grew up not really having much of a concept of money because it wasn't something that was super scarce or anything like that. So when I was little, my parents were like upper middle class. As I got older, we kind of drifted down a little bit. My dad sold some businesses and became a farmer. So we had a little bit less money when I was older, but it wasn't something that we talked about all that much. Like, I don't ever remember having any financial education as a kid. If we ever needed money, my dad would give us a job, we would go do it, and he would pay us lots of money for that age. I think I made $10 an hour at 10 years old whenever I needed money. And that was a lot back then compared to my very first actual job at an actual business where I made $7.25. That's when I kind of realized I was making lots of money as a child. So I didn't want for anything. I didn't really have a concept of money. The first big thing that was impactful in my life in many different aspects was when I was just before I turned 17, I was halfway through my junior year. I actually got kicked out of my house and my parents sent me to live with my brother's wife's parents about 9 hours away from where I lived. And it was not expected. It was very traumatic for me at the time because I was really ingrained in school and activities. I ended up moving to this new place and kind of having to rebuild at that time. And I remember as a pretty young kid realizing that I didn't want to be there in the place that I was kind of assigned to after I got kicked out. And so I ended up graduating early. I graduated at 17 and I moved to Dallas on my own at 17. And that was when I got my real life education in money because I was 17. I'd never had to pay for anything really in my life. And all of a sudden I had to get a job. That's the job where I cleaned tanning beds for $7.25 an hour. I had to pay for pretty much everything on my own at that point. And from that point going forward, I went from never having to think about money ever to I'm 100% on my own. I pay for everything. I don't have people that I go to ask for money. If I'm not making enough money to buy food and rent, then I am not eating food or having housing. It was a pretty weird transition for me. And I wish that I had had more exposure to real life money situations as a kid, but I just didn't. So I've had to fast track my own education and learning what do things cost. And I have a very vivid memory of recognizing what things cost. I went to the store to buy razors for the first time. And there's tons of different options for razors. So I ended up buying some razors and I called my mom on the way home and I said, Mom, I'm so sorry I used to complain about you buying the cheap razors. I understand now because I bought the cheapest razors that you could buy at the grocery store, but I just had no idea how much razors cost until that moment. Same thing with pretty much everything I bought. I didn't know how much gas cost. I didn't know how much rent or living expenses cost. So I was just kind of learning these things on the fly.
You say you didn't have real life experiences as a child, but I think 17 years old is pretty young. So I would say that is still a child. So how did you manage? What did you decide at that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot by trial and error, I would say. I knew at that point I already had picked a career path. So I knew immediately that I was just going to try to fast track that career path as quickly as possible so that then I could start making like money essentially. So I was taking college classes. I was working at the tanning salon as many hours as I could get. I would work 12-hour shifts sometimes in order to be able to cover my expenses. And then I would take out loans for school, of course, because I didn't have any financial backing at that point. And it gets really interesting because around the time that I was 19, so I'd had about 2 years of trying to figure things out on my own. My parents actually ended up losing everything. My dad went to prison for tax fraud, which was unexpected to us. And at 19, I was out of the house, but that was still pretty impactful on me. And I watched my family go from middle class to poverty in an instance, lost everything, the house. And so then I was in a situation where I was providing for myself, but there was also always this kind of pull to want to help my family out financially too. So over the next chunk of time, it was like a lot of give and take, like try to make what money I could, try not to spend it on anything that I don't absolutely need, go to school to try to build this career path, help my family out when I can. And it was just like trying to keep my head above water every single day for a good amount of years.
I don't think we've actually talked about this expressly. So you knew you wanted to be a chiropractor?
Yeah.
How did you know that from such an early age?
Yeah, I had a really good experience, not personally, but my younger brother, had a really good experience with a chiropractor when I was younger. And I mentioned that I have 8 siblings. So when he went through a health crisis and a chiropractor really helped him. And when he was going through that health crisis, I was the oldest living at home. So I was doing a lot of parenting at that time. So my parents could take him to a lot of medical appointments. And the chiropractor ended up really helping him. And at 10 years old, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to impact families in that way. So I was like, I don't know what chiropractic is, but I'm going to go be a chiropractor. I also was very fascinated with the fact that most chiropractors own their own businesses. And that's something I knew I wanted to do from a very young age. So to me, it was like the perfect career path.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you knew you wanted to be a chiropractor. You were 17. Did you start right away?
I had mentioned that I fast tracked things. I very much fast tracked this process as fast as possible, faster than I would recommend it for the average person. But I started taking classes at a junior college, and I took all my basics at a junior college. And then I transitioned to the chiropractic college as soon as I could to take the last final bit of my undergrad classes. And I actually started chiropractic college when I was 20 because I remember having my 21st birthday in my second trimester, I think, of chiropractic college. So I mean, I still think I was a baby at that time. I can't believe they even let me start in school, but I was the youngest in my class by far when I started that doctorate program.
And what did that journey look like for you?
So I went through the doctorate program. I graduated at 23. I knew at that point I wasn't quite ready to practice, and I was still really feeling out like what the next few years of my life were going to look like. So I chose to go on and get a master's after that. It was like a fast track master's program in positive psychology, which is unrelated to chiropractic. And it's not something that I use in day to day now, but it was a really huge personal development time for me. And I really appreciated that time to personally develop myself before I went out and practiced on my own. So I was living in Iowa. I was going to chiropractic school. I moved to Georgia. I went through this master's program. I was nannying on the side, so still trying to make money to live at the same time. And then when I finished that up, I moved to Austin, Texas to open up my first clinic.
Wow. I mean, we learn something new every day because I consider you to be a good friend that I know a lot about. And I had no idea that you had a master's.
Yep.
And that's positive psychology. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like that's probably been a really impactful thing in just knowing that you own businesses, right? So I feel like even though you think you don't use that day to day, do you feel like that maybe affects the way that you manage your businesses and your investments?
Yeah, I would say so. Positive psychology is really focused on the spectrum of like happiness in life. And I think chiropractic really focuses on the physical part of pushing your body to be as optimal as possible. Whereas positive psychology is really focused on the mental aspect of pushing your mental health as positive as possible. Because, mental health, physical health, it's all a spectrum. There's sick and then there's not sick. But just because you're not sick, it doesn't mean you're healthy or you're functioning optimally. So it really helped put a lot of pieces together for me in my life. And yeah, I do think that translates into how I manage and which activities I pick for my team to do, because I'm always kind of pushing that box of wanting to find optimal functioning as a team also. So yeah, in those ways, it has been impactful.
I guess now going back to the original where you were going with this. So you moved here, you were 24?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had just turned 24. Yeah.
Okay. You're 24. At this point, you have a doctorate in chiropractic. You have a master's in positive psychology. And what's your financial picture at this point?
I have no money. I am like poverty level, no money.
Okay.
But I want to open up a practice.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? What does that look like?
That's a great question. You have to get extremely creative. So again, I didn't come from a position where I like had family that I could ask or had friends that I could ask. I just had to figure it out on my own. So my very first practice was actually out of a rental house that I had that had an extra room in it. I had a portable table that I had purchased in school, and I bought a lot of stuff from Goodwill, my chairs, my decorations. I'll never forget because my practice name at that time was called Vibrant Life, but I couldn't afford any sort of signage. So I got chalkboard paint and I like arts and crafted a sign to put on the outside of this first practice. And yeah, that's how I started. That's where I started seeing patients.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what went from there? I mean, I know so you started this practice, then did you get a following? How does that work?
Yeah. So I was in that room for less than a year, maybe 8 months. Anyone who owns a small business knows it can be really challenging in the beginning to get your name out and get the word out. And so I started very small and I just started slowly but surely building up my patient base. I also nannied at the same time. So I had some source of dependable income while I was starting my practice, essentially. And I did that for about 8 months. I was making enough money to move into an actual commercial space after that, which was also a room out of another office. I practiced there for another 3 or 4 years. And my first 5 years in practice, I had no staff, zero. I did everything. I wore all the hats. It took me probably 3 years before I was profitable enough to take home enough money to feel some amounts of stability. I probably nannied through my first year or two of practice. And then once I hit year 3 or 4, I gave up the second job and I was making enough money again to support myself, but not enough to hire staff. It wasn't until year 5 that I moved from practicing inside this practice with other people in it to the practice I have now and started hiring staff.
How did ownership look like for you? Because I know you've gone from owning your own to, I guess you rented from, it sounds like you kind of rented a room, but
yeah.
And then now you're back to a larger office. So what did that look like? Or what was your
Yeah, the business structure,
Yeah.
essentially. Yep. So I did this quite a few ways. I had my room out of my house and I was the business owner there specifically. Then I moved into this clinic with other providers. And full disclosure, my ex was one of the providers there. And we kept our businesses very separate at that point. And then at some point down the road, we integrated all the businesses. And then I was considered an independent contractor under his business. Not my smartest move financially, because it definitely takes some power away from you. You can't control all the aspects at that point, but that's what we decided to do. And then let's see, I was about 5 years in. My ex, I found out, was sleeping with, dating the receptionist or assistant, whatever you want to call it. And it was a pretty quick transition. I found out, and the next day had my equipment sitting in my front lawn of our house. And I had full patients on the books for the next week, but clearly that I wasn't going back into the clinic setting I was in previously with him. So over the weekend, I had to find a new space. And so I found a bigger clinic space and I transitioned into that space over the next week. And then so I took a week off in between old clinic and new clinic, and then started on Monday with a brand new clinic and went from there.
Oh, wow. That was fast. So it was in a weekend that you decided you created this whole new business structure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have an option. I had tons of patients on the schedule and I was just locked out of the clinic. So I had to figure something out. And I do remember a really pivotal moment because I was in my garage, like crying, feeling really broken. My whole personal life had blown up. My business had blown up. And I was like, you know what? I can either run from this. I can say, screw it. I'm going to Mexico or I'm going somewhere else. And I can just be like done and totally reset my life. Or I can find a new clinic and I can build something really amazing and really great and essentially build the life that I would like to be living and the financial situation that I want to be in. And I chose the latter.
And how did that work? So did you have some investable assets, or how did you decide, yeah, I can do this tomorrow?
I had a little bit of money that was saved up from the clinic that I was transitioning out of. Very little, probably $20K was all I had, but it was enough for me to feel comfortable renting this new space. But fun fact, when I moved into that new space, that first month that I was there, I did double the amount of revenue that I'd ever done at the last space.
Wow.
So my people showed up for me. My patients showed up for me. It was really incredible. And I think that in and of itself gave me the motivation to like go for it at that point. So I was making enough money to be profitable. I immediately hired my first and second employees in that first 2 months because I needed support. There were so many people coming in, and grew the business from there.
That's amazing. With that $20,000, and let's call it reserves, you felt comfortable to start your own business over a weekend, which is amazing. I know that you have now grown the business immensely from that. So what are you doing today? And what is from that one clinic that, for all of you to know, is out in Dripping Springs? And I believe it's not the original location. Well, it is the original like office building,
Yeah.
but it's another that it grew out of. I was not part of that. You grew
Hey,
out.
but you were there. You saw it.
lived at BirthCo for a while, but you moved out of that space. You grew out of that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then you moved into a larger office in that same building. And it's grown from there. So what did that trajectory look like for you?
So that first space that we were in, I think it was probably 1,000 square feet. It was plenty big. It was probably the biggest space I practiced in, but we ended up outgrowing that very, very quickly. So then we transitioned into another unit within that building before the year was over, probably 8 months in. And that space is probably around 16 to 1,800 square feet. It's much, much bigger. And after that, the year after that, we opened our second clinic. And then from there, we've opened a clinic every year since, and 2 this year. From a financial aspect, I really did a lot of reinvesting as soon as I kind of had the cash reserve to comfortably move into opening a new clinic, which for me, between 60 and 100K, I would want to put into a new clinic to get it open and up and running and sustainable until it was profitable. When I would kind of hit that in reserve, I would move on and open up another clinic.
So you opened your first clinic in 2021,
Yeah.
and you said you've opened one a year since then. So what are we at today in 2025?
So I have 4 clinics that I personally own. And then last year we moved into a franchise model. So we opened our first franchise this year also. So 5 BirthCos total.
You said something earlier in the podcast. You liked being a chiropractor because there was a sense of business ownership.
Yeah,
You still practice? I know that.
I do. Yeah.
You have 4 practices plus a franchise. What's growing now? Is it like more franchises, or are you looking to own and operate?
Yeah, I would love to grow from both aspects. I love the idea of franchising because we can grow much more quickly. We can mentor young chiropractors. We can have a bigger reach than I can have if if I'm running the day-to-day myself or my team is running the day-to-day. But I would like to have a few more corporate offices also. I think that I'm really in the phase of my life, in the mode of my life where I'm really chasing growth right now. And I don't know how long that desire will be for, but right now I'm like loving each stage of business as we get to it.
What made you want to franchise your business?
Yeah. That's a great question. Actually, people ask me this all the time because it's kind of a unique way of growing. I was looking at what my options were as far as growth goes. And the typical chiropractor, they have one clinic usually, and they just add providers as their one clinic grows. And that's kind of it. That's what the average chiropractor does. For me, that wasn't enough. And I remember having a very specific conversation with a patient, actually. I was chatting with her about growth, and she was a business owner, so she would always ask me about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking into what my options are. I'm really interested in what it would look like to franchise. And she looked at me and she said, why franchise? You've got 3 clinics. I had 3 clinics at the time. She's like, why not just grow these clinics? Is that not enough for you? And I really mulled that question around for about a month. Would 3 clinics be enough for me? Should I just coast and chill out? I'm pretty high strung all the time. The idea of just kind of chilling out, I was like, could I do that? Is that something that would make me happy? I can grow these 2 clinics to whatever the top revenue could be essentially for 3 clinics and then just coast. And I just came to the realization that one of my values is accomplishment. And for me personally, I always really need to be pushing that needle of growth, or I'm not really feeling fulfilled in that area. I also am extremely passionate about the services that we offer moms. And I think that every mom should have access to the services that we have and the support and the education that we have. And so to have fulfillment and passion in life, I really have to see this mission through and just see how far I can grow and how many people we can impact. Franchising in chiropractic is very rare. In fact, when I was doing research on it, I found about 5 chiropractic franchises, with the biggest one being The Joint. Most people know what The Joint is. Every franchise that I researched, they all had been founded by men, with one of them, I think, was a husband-wife team. But it was a very male-dominated way of growing. And it was interesting to see the business models also were very, I would say, male energy driven, in that they all had very long open hours. They were all like pretty intense structures. Their hiring process was very intense, and their marketing was also very generic in general. So for BirthCo, what I really love about BirthCo is, as a chiropractic center and as a wellness center, it doesn't really exist anywhere else. And it's a very female energy type of clinic. And so I wanted to duplicate that and make it available for people who would be interested in our model versus these other fast-paced, intense type chiropractic models. I knew nothing about franchising at the time. I knew that franchises existed, but I literally knew nothing about it. I spent probably a month Googling, like, what is a franchise? What are royalties? How do franchises grow? What are the franchises that are out there? And I had a decision with my partner, Dylan, and I was like, I love this idea of growing. I could mentor and empower other young chiropractors to jump into this model so they wouldn't have to struggle as much as I struggled for so many years. And he was super supportive. I think he said, babe, it's not that expensive. That's how much it would cost to buy a car. You should do it. And I was like, okay. So I hired a consulting company and they helped walk me through that initial process because, again, I knew nothing about franchising. And they helped me out through that first year. And I finally kind of got a grasp of most of the aspects of franchising. I'm still learning, of course. And we did our first clinic, learned a lot through that. And now we're just looking to grow both internally through our corporate offices and through franchises.
And you've done this all before are you 30?
I'm 33. I turned 34 this year. Yeah, I feel old, but I know I'm not that old.
You're not old at all.
So that's where we're at today.
So your first franchise, is that something local?
It is. Yeah, our first franchise. And it's funny because I really, in my head, really believed that chiropractors would be the ones to franchise BirthCos. But actually, our first franchise was a patient of ours. And she was so impacted by how we helped her through her pregnancy. And she worked in the corporate world and she was like, I want to do something that's more meaningful, that gives me more purpose. And so she opened the first franchise here in Austin, Texas, in Central Austin. And that was 2 months ago, I believe. So it's still in its infancy and we're super excited to have her on board. And she really wants to open multiple locations. And it really opened up my eyes to BirthCo as an opportunity for that type of person as well. Like, a mom, a female that works in the corporate world, wants something that has more flexibility, more purpose, wants to be a small business owner. This could also be a really awesome opportunity for them to transition out of that world and into, the small business world.
Yeah, that's incredible. So not a chiropractor. So how involved are you in that franchise?
So this first franchise, I would say I'm extremely involved. It was really important to me that it was successful. And it was our first time doing that. I have started stepping out of clinical practice specifically so that I could move myself more into a mentoring role. And myself and my COO, Sarah, did a ton to help mentor her through all the processes of small business, from hiring to management to finding a space to training to growth plan, marketing plan, all of that. We've helped her pretty much every step of the way.
Now you're in a franchise mode. What does it take to franchise?
The biggest thing that I learned is there's a lot of legal document that you have to have in place. So there's a document called an FDD, and it is just all the legal that you need to have behind a franchise. I think our FDD is 200 pages. It is ginormous. And that document, the consulting company that I hired, they helped me put that together. Within it, it stipulates literally every situation that you could possibly think of. That is the most important foundational document. That's the one that your franchisees sign. Outside of that, you really need to put together training documents. So every piece of your business has to be standardized. And this took me way longer than I thought it was going to take me. They would ask me questions like, how much square footage is allowed for the waiting room? I was like, I don't know. Let's measure all our waiting rooms and see like what the ranges are. What signage are they allowed? Are they allowed to buy signage from anywhere, or do they have to buy it through you? What software can they use? Do you pay for the software and they pay you a technology fee, or do they go out and get the software? Which softwares do you standardize? For instance, payroll. Do you make them use your payroll software, or can they use whoever they want to? So every single piece, uniforms, marketing, decor, processes, has to be documented. And so that took us probably 6 to 9 months to fully put together. The consulting company helped with some of it. A lot of it we then went on to tweak afterwards and make a little bit more user-friendly, especially with how much we're using things online. We had a 200-page manual essentially of all the departments, and then we moved that into easier bite-sized training pieces. And, during this process of our first franchising, we are learning where we're missing gaps in training and things like that. So we're in the process already of revamping our whole training system to make it user-friendly, make it searchable, make it so that we have a place for franchisees to get more from us even once they open. How are we supporting them? Are we giving them marketing document? Are we helping them with sales? Are we helping them with training? Are we supporting their providers with appropriate training? And so it's just a lot of operations and decision-making strategies, essentially.
You had your reserves that you had each time that you opened an office, right, to create the next office. What did that reserve look like for you in order to start this franchise model? Was it the same?
It was about the same. I would say I probably put about 100K into with that, like having extra staff on staff, the consulting company, all the legal fees and all of that. I probably did it for about 100K flex up or down. But the consulting company did tell me very specifically that it takes on average about 6K to bring on a new franchisee. Like that's how much you have to put into marketing also. That's another number as well. It's more expensive than I realized to manage the franchisee. You've got to get audits every year. You've got to have software in the background that you're paying for. So those aspects of finances I had to learn also. I kind of thought in the beginning it was like, here's the money I'm going to invest into it. I'm going to get this done and then it'll be like making money after that. But small business never works that way. The bigger you get, the more things you're also paying for. I have to make sure I'm budgeting for those other expenses that I didn't know existed, like the audit fees every year and things like that.
I mean, you're only 34. What's next? I mean, I feel like you've done it.
I mean, from here, I think just continuing to grow and continuing to build financial stability for myself. I've always said 100 BirthCos. I've said it since the beginning on my vision board forever. Every time I make a vision board, it says 100 BirthCos. So that's a really big goal for me to get to. And once we get there, it really, I hope there's a BirthCo in most cities that every woman has access to what we have to offer. And I'm definitely very motivated to continue to grow and achieve and build, essentially.
We keep on alluding to what BirthCo offers. Yeah. What does BirthCo offer? I find it to be a very special place. I mean, it was where I spent a majority of my last maternity leave.
You basically lived at BirthCo with your baby, your last baby.
It was a very relaxing place. I had a very traumatic birth situation, and I honestly didn't know you before then. My son was a preemie. He was 5 weeks early. And he was having trouble latching and was very adamant upon nursing. I'd nursed my first child for 2 years. And she was like, he needs some body work. And you were on the list of providers. So we showed up there as baby and mommy, and baby needed work. And I was like, you know what? If my lactation consultant, who was absolutely amazing, she was like a 65-year-old woman who was in her second life, had recommended this, I knew she had done her due diligence. And so that's how we ended up there. But what else do you guys offer?
Yeah, we have 4 core services: chiropractic, and all of our chiropractors are specialized in prenatal and postpartum care. We have core and pelvic floor rehabilitation. We have a very specialized program where we use technology plus rehab exercises to help you heal 3 to 4 times faster than you would just traditional physical therapy. We offer massage therapy, and we have a beautiful setup with the belly cut out for during pregnancy. And we have very specialized massages, a labor prep massage, some lymphatic work for postpartum care. And then we also offer hormone balancing. I would say above and beyond what we offer as far as services go, we're really invested in our patients, and we offer a lot of support, a lot of education, and a lot of community. So we really try hard to go above and beyond us just being a practitioner, helping you with whatever physical ailments you're coming in with. But we really want to get to know you and make sure that you feel supported, make sure that you have the resources that you need to have, especially during these like very special, intimate times of your life when you are having a kid. I find that our patients very often become kind of like family to us. It's like, I've known you for years and years, and you are a patient, and we've built this great relationship even above and beyond that. So community is really big and really important. There's a lot of things that are lacking in motherhood, especially in that like postpartum period. And we want to try to fill those gaps as much as possible.
Yeah, achieved. I can say 100% achieved. I felt very at home, like I said, traumatic birth. And I went from like going for my child to get body work to then having a community and working out there and getting massages. It was a very welcoming place. So I feel like if community was it for you, girl, we've got it. We're done.
I have a really great memory of you. Actually, we were doing some rehab audio and you are doing some sort of squat motion and you've got your kid on you. You're using your kid as a weight and you're squatting up and down and we're all just like laughing and giggling. And memories like those really make it worth it to me to invest so much time and effort into BirthCo because, you know, on some of those days, I know that we maybe were the only adults that you even saw during your maternity leave. The rest of the time you were at home with baby, and we just make it fun and inviting and accepting. If you need to cry, cry. If you want to laugh, laugh. But it's just a safe space for moms to be.
Well, I'm here for the 100 BirthCos.
We'll have to do a big party when we hit 100.
I mean, we'll have to do a big party when we should have already done a big party, but we should definitely do a big party you're already at 5.
Yeah.
We should have done one yesterday, but we'll do one at 10.
We should do one every time we open a BirthCo.
There you go. We should definitely memorialize the ones that end in 0.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
Like 10 is...
Yeah, that's going to be big.
That's going to be big. And I feel like it's coming soon.
I hope so. We opened a corporate location in January and a franchise in February. We're slated at the end of the year to at least open one more corporate. And I hope to open one more franchise at the end of the year as well. So that'll be 4 for this year. That would be amazing.
I'm in awe of you. Of course.
You're so
I was in
sweet.
awe of you when I met you when you were 29 and you were doing this. And I was like, that's amazing.
I do want to give a shout out to my team because I have an amazing team on staff. There's no way that we could have grown to where we are today without the team that we have now. So it wasn't all me, and I really appreciate them a lot. They very much believe in our mission and vision, and they put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into our growth the last couple of years.
And your turnover has been pretty low. As a person that's been there since the beginning, I'm like, I know, at least from what Sarah's been there since pretty much the beginning. Molly has been there since the beginning. A shout out to Molly and Dripping. But yeah, I feel like you've really built an incredible team. And I didn't know your master's in positive psychology, but I feel that really that makes a lot of sense to me when I'm thinking about you holistically and what you've built. I feel like that completely makes sense with what BirthCo is. Before we leave, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
First question is your advice to all of the huntresses out there? Investment advice, regular advice, financial advice. What is it that you want people to know and what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a good one. There's so much good stuff. I think for me, and I think this is really applicable to anyone who is interested in small business or entrepreneurship or things like that, it takes a long time to be profitable and to be in the green and to have something built. So don't quit too soon. I feel like a lot of great businesses and a lot of great business ideas, they never get to that blooming point because people quit right before they're about to explode or make something big. So I think just my basic advice would be like, just keep going. You never know if your big break or if your big thing is right around the corner.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I feel like it is easy to give up. You know, I find myself in those situations where I'm like, should I give up? And I'm like, nope, keep on moving forward.
Yeah. It's a hard world out there, but you can do it.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, what does rich mean to you?
For me, rich means the freedom to have choices. And I remember very specifically the first time I was like, man, I feel rich. I opened my refrigerator up and I had so much food and I could choose to eat anything that I wanted. And I was like, this is what it means to be rich. And that's on a small scale. The more money that you have, the more freedom you have to choose. You get to choose if you go on vacation, and then you get to choose where you go on vacation. You get to choose how much you work, how much you don't work. So being rich to me just means being able to have those choices.
So wise beyond your years, Katherine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If you don't mind just saying, talk rich to me.
Talk rich to me.
Perfect.
You've been listening to Talk Rich to Me, a production from Huntress Wealth. For more chill takes on finance, sign up for our newsletter at huntresswealth.com. That's HUNTRESSWEALTH.com.